Captain Marcus Reeves clutched his damaged helmet as hurricane-force winds battered the escape pod. The mission to explore this uncharted planet, designated Proxima 7, had gone catastrophically wrong when their ship encountered an electromagnetic anomaly in the atmosphere. While the rest of the crew had managed to evacuate in functioning pods, his had been damaged in the separation, sending him spiraling to a different landing zone. The pod's exterior sensors were still functioning enough to display the maelstrom outside, violet-tinged clouds swirling in patterns unlike any Earth storm, with occasional flashes of emerald lightning. The navigational system was fried, communications dead. Marcus was truly alone. "Damn it all," he muttered, strapping his tactical vest tighter and checking his sidearm. 14 years of military service, decorated for valor 3 times, and here he was about to be killed by alien weather. The irony wasn't lost on him. A particularly violent gust rocked the pod, nearly tipping it onto its side. The emergency exit would soon be his only option. Staying inside the increasingly unstable structure was a death sentence. Marcus took a deep breath, activated his emergency beacon, though he doubted anyone would receive it, and prepared to face the storm. Just as he reached for the release lever, the winds suddenly stopped. Not gradually. Not shifting direction. They simply ceased, as if someone had flipped a switch. The silence was almost more unnerving than the howling had been. Marcus cautiously opened the hatch and peered outside. The storm still raged, he could see it churning violently about 50 meters away in all directions. But here, right around his pod, was an impossible bubble of calm. And standing at the edge of this phenomenon was a figure. She was tall, taller than any human woman, with skin the color of burnished copper and hair that seemed to flow and ripple like dark water even in the stillness. Her eyes, when they locked with his, were the precise color of the lightning he'd observed, a luminous emerald that seemed to glow from within. "You are not welcome here, Skyfaller," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that somehow penetrated the barrier between them. "Yet I cannot allow even an intruder to perish so ignobly." Marcus stepped fully out of the pod, weapon instinctively at the ready. "Who are you? What are you doing to the storm?" The woman, if that term even applied, raised a slender hand, and the circular wall of wind constricted slightly, making the bubble of calm smaller. It was clearly a demonstration, and an effective one. "I am Commander Ilera of the Proximan Elemental Guard," she replied, lowering her hand. "And I am not doing anything to the storm. I am simply asking it to obey, as all elements do when properly addressed." Marcus snorted. "Right. And I'm supposed to believe you control the weather?" Ilera's luminous eyes narrowed. "Your belief is irrelevant. Your survival, however, is currently dependent on my goodwill." She gestured to the raging tempest around them. "This storm will continue for 3 more cycles. You would not survive it without shelter." "I've weathered worse," Marcus said, although they both knew it was bravado. "Fascinating," Ilera replied with what seemed like genuine curiosity. "Your species appears to value pride over survival. Is this typical, or are you an exceptional specimen?" Despite everything, Marcus felt heat rise to his face. "Listen, I appreciate the save, but I need to rendezvous with my crew. If you could just point me toward the nearest settlement." "There is no safe path through this tempest," she interrupted. "Even I must respect certain natural boundaries. You will accompany me to my outpost and remain there until the storm passes." It wasn't a request. "And if I refuse?" Marcus challenged. Ilera's mouth curved into something between a smile and a grimace. "Then I withdraw my protection, and the storm reclaims what is rightfully its domain." She turned and began walking toward a faintly glowing structure in the distance that he hadn't noticed before. "The choice is yours, Skyfaller." Marcus hesitated only briefly before following her. The storm might not obey him, but he'd be damned if he'd let this alien woman think a human soldier couldn't handle a little meteorological challenge. Little did he know, this encounter would change the course of two worlds forever. The Proximan outpost was unlike any structure Marcus had ever seen. It appeared to be grown rather than built, a seamless fusion of crystalline material and living plant matter that pulsed with bioluminescent light. As they entered, the walls seemed to respond to Ilara's presence, brightening along pathways as she walked. "Your technology is impressive," Marcus admitted reluctantly, trailing behind her. "It is not technology as you understand it," Ilara replied without looking back. "We do not impose our will upon materials. We form symbiotic relationships with the elements and living systems of our world. Whatever you call it, it's advanced." He ran his hand along a wall that felt simultaneously cool like stone and warm like flesh. "My people would be very interested in learning more." Ilara stopped abruptly and turned to face him. "Is that why you came? To take what is not yours?" "We came to explore, to make contact." "Peaceful contact," Marcus emphasized, meeting her gaze steadily. "I'm a soldier, yes, but our mission was scientific." "Soldiers rarely serve science, in my experience," she said, her luminous eyes studying him intently. "They serve conquest." Before Marcus could respond, an alarm echoed through the structure, a haunting, multi-toned sound that made the walls pulse red. Ilara's posture changed instantly from wary host to alert commander. "What is it?" Marcus asked, instinctively reaching for his weapon. "Vraxians," she hissed, the word itself sounding like a curse. "They use the cover of the storm to hunt." "Hostile locals?" "Invaders, like you," she said pointedly, but with far less honorable intentions. "They strip planets of resources and leave nothing but ruin." She moved swiftly toward what appeared to be a command center, her long strides forcing Marcus to jog to keep up. Inside the chamber, living displays showed multiple heat signatures approaching the outpost. The creatures moved with unnatural speed, six-limbed and low to the ground. "How many of your people are stationed here?" Marcus asked, assessing the tactical situation. "I am alone at this outpost," Ilara replied, manipulating the display with graceful motions of her hands. "It is meant as an early warning station." "And your warning, who exactly? How far is the nearest reinforcement?" "Too far. The storm interferes with our communication network." Marcus absorbed this information quickly. "So we're on our own against, how many?" 12, perhaps 15. "And they're coming here why? What do you have that they want?" Ilara hesitated before answering. "Me. Or rather, what I represent. Vraxians cannot manipulate elemental energies as my people do, but they have developed technology to harvest and weaponize those who can. They want to capture you," Marcus concluded grimly. "Use your abilities somehow." "Yes. And now they will have interest in you as well, an unknown species, potentially valuable." Marcus pulled his pistol and checked the charge. "Well, Commander Ilara, it seems we have a common problem. I suggest a temporary alliance." For the first time, something like surprise flickered across her face. "You would fight alongside me? Against creatures you know nothing about?" "I know they're hostile. I know we're outnumbered." He shrugged. "And I know I don't want to be captured by something called a Vraxian. That's enough for now." A faint smile touched her lips. "Perhaps there is more to your species than stubborn pride after all." She waved her hand, and part of the wall reconfigured itself, revealing a cache of weapons, sleek, organic-looking devices that hummed with energy. "These will be more effective than your primitive projectile weapon," she said, offering him what appeared to be a rifle. "It channels concentrated thermal energy." "I'll stick with what I know, thanks," Marcus replied, patting his sidearm. "But I'll take one as backup." Ilara's expression hardened. "Your weapon will be useless against their armor. This is not the time for human stubbornness." "It's not stubbornness, it's tactics," Marcus countered. I don't know how to use your weapon effectively yet. In battle, you go with what you know first. A distant explosion rocked the outpost before she could argue further. The displays showed the Vraxians had breached the outer perimeter. We need higher ground and a defensive position, Marcus said, instantly shifting into combat mode. Is there a command level with limited access points? Ilara nodded reluctantly, impressed despite herself. Follow me. As they raced through the shifting corridors of the outpost, the storm outside intensified, as if responding to the mounting tension. Marcus noticed that Ilara occasionally gestured toward the walls, which seemed to reconfigure themselves, sealing off pathways behind them. Can you use your storm control trick against these Vraxians? He asked as they ascended to the upper level. The elements respond differently within structures, she explained tersely. And Vraxians have technology that disrupts elemental manipulation at close range. So it's a firefight then, Marcus said, a grim smile forming. Good thing you've got a soldier on your side. They reached a circular chamber at the top of the outpost with a 360-degree view of the surrounding area. Marcus quickly assessed the defensible positions and potential vulnerabilities. How do we seal the access points? He asked. Instead of answering, Ilara placed her palm against the central console. The entire floor of the chamber illuminated with a pattern of swirling energy, and the entrance they had used melded seamlessly back into the wall. Will that hold them? Marcus asked. Not indefinitely. Ilara's voice was tight with concentration. But it will slow them down. The displays showed the Vraxians converging on the outpost from all sides now, their movements coordinated and methodical. These weren't mindless predators, they were trained fighters executing a planned assault. As the first explosion shook the chamber's floor, Marcus and Ilara exchanged a look of grim determination. Human soldier and alien commander, enemies by circumstance but allies by necessity, prepared to make their stand together against a common threat. The storm raged on outside, but within the outpost, a different kind of tempest was brewing. The aftermath of battle left the outpost scarred but standing. Bodies of Vraxian invaders littered the corridors, their chitinous exoskeletons cracked open by thermal blasts and, surprisingly, several well-placed shots from Marcus's primitive weapon. He had discovered that while their armor deflected direct hits, the joints remained vulnerable, a weakness he exploited with surgical precision. Ilara watched silently as Marcus tended to a gash on his forearm, his movements efficient and practiced. The human had fought with unexpected skill, his tactical suggestions proving decisive in the skirmish. Most surprising was how he had placed himself between her and danger more than once, a curious behavior for someone who had been her prisoner mere hours ago. Your combat expertise is considerable, she finally said, breaking the silence. Though your methods lack finesse. Marcus looked up with a wry smile. That's the nicest way anyone's ever called me a brute. I did not mean, she began, then stopped when she realized he was teasing her. Another puzzling human behavior. You are injured because of me. Occupational hazard, he shrugged, securing the makeshift bandage. Besides, we both know you saved my hide out there when that big one cornered me. Ilara's expression softened fractionally. A practical decision. You were proving tactically useful. Right. Purely tactical. His eyes locked with hers for a moment longer than necessary before he busied himself checking his weapon. The storm outside had intensified during the battle, rattling the structure with increasingly violent gusts. Ilara frowned and placed her palm against the wall, closing her eyes in concentration. Something's wrong, she murmured. The storm pattern has changed. It's angry. Storms don't get angry, Marcus said automatically, then caught himself. Though I suppose on a planet where someone can control the weather, anything's possible. I don't control it, she corrected sharply. I communicate with it. There's a difference. She moved to the command console, her movements suddenly urgent. The Vraxians' weapons disrupted the atmospheric balance. The storm is becoming unstable. As if to emphasize her point, a section of the outer wall groaned under the pressure of a particularly violent gust. Hairline fractures appeared in the crystalline material. "Can you calm it down?" Marcus asked, tension evident in his voice. "Do your elemental communication thing?" "I'm trying," she said, her voice strained as she extended both hands toward the ceiling, eyes glowing brighter. "But the disruption is severe. I need to get outside, to connect directly with the storm's energy." "Outside? In that?" Marcus gestured to the viewing panel where violet lightning now forked continuously across the sky. "That's suicide." "It's the only way," she insisted. "There's a stabilization chamber on the roof. If I can reach it." The decision was made for them when a massive section of the ceiling tore away, exposing them to the full fury of the storm. Wind whipped through the command center, sending equipment flying. Marcus grabbed Ilara instinctively, pulling her behind a structural column as debris crashed around them. "So much for your plan," he shouted over the howling wind. Ilara's eyes were wide, but not with fear, with a strange, wild energy that seemed to respond to the storm itself. Her hair floated around her as if underwater, glowing with the same emerald light as her eyes. "This is better," she said, her voice somehow carrying over the chaos. "Direct contact." Before Marcus could stop her, she stepped out from behind the column, arms outstretched to the raging tempest. The wind and lightning seemed to converge on her, enveloping her in a cocoon of elemental energy. For a terrifying moment, Marcus thought she would be torn apart, but instead, she began to absorb the storm's fury, channeling it through her body. The sight was both terrifying and mesmerizing. Her copper skin now glowed with veins of light that pulsed in rhythm with the lightning. Her feet lifted slightly off the ground as the energy flowed through her. Marcus watched in awe as the violent winds gradually calmed, the lightning strikes becoming less frequent. Ilara was literally taking the storm into herself, piece by piece. When the last of the violent energy dissipated, she collapsed. Marcus rushed forward, catching her before she hit the floor. Her skin burned hot against his, tiny arcs of energy still dancing across her surface. "Ilara," he called, genuine concern in his voice. "Stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open, the glow slowly fading back to their natural emerald. "The storm," she whispered. "Is it gone?" he assured her. "Or calm enough?" "What the hell did you just do?" "What I was born to do," she said weakly. "My people are conduits. Balancers. We don't control the elements, we become them when necessary." Marcus helped her to a sitting position, keeping his arm firmly around her waist. "That's the most incredible thing I've ever seen," he admitted. "And I've seen some crazy stuff across 3 star systems." For the first time, she smiled at him, a genuine expression that transformed her stern features into something breathtaking. "You risked your life to protect me from the Vraxians. Why?" The question caught him off guard. It was the right thing to do." "No," she said, studying his face intently. "It was more than duty. I saw it in your eyes." Their faces were inches apart now, her breath warm against his skin. The intensity in her gaze held him captive more effectively than any storm could. "Maybe I'm just drawn to powerful, impossible women who can command the elements," he said softly. "And perhaps I find stubborn, resourceful humans more fascinating than I should," she replied, her hand coming up to touch his face tentatively, as if discovering something new and precious. The kiss, when it came, felt as electric as the storm she had just absorbed. Different species, different worlds, yet in that moment, they found a perfect harmony, elemental attraction that defied all logic but felt undeniably right. As the repaired structure hummed gently around them and the calmed storm retreated to the horizon, Marcus and Ilara surrendered to a different kind of tempest, one born not of atmospheric pressure but of two souls recognizing something unexpected and extraordinary in each other. In the aftermath of chaos, they found a moment of perfect stillness together, heedless of the vast differences that should have kept them apart. Outside, Proxima 7's twin moons emerged from behind the dissipating clouds, bathing them in silver light as old barriers crumbled and new possibilities awakened. 3 days had passed since the storm. 3 days of healing, of cautious exploration, both of the outpost and of each other. Ilera had shown Marcus the secrets of her world, how the crystalline structures responded to bioelectric impulses, how the flora communicated through networks of luminescent roots, how her people had evolved alongside the planet's elemental forces rather than seeking to dominate them. In turn, Marcus had shared stories of Earth and humanity's complex relationship with their home planet. He spoke of oceans and deserts, of crowded cities and remote wilderness. He described the contradictions of human nature, their capacity for both destruction and creation, for cruelty and compassion. At night, they discovered each other more intimately. Her skin against his, warmer, with patterns that shifted with her emotions. His scars telling stories of battles fought across distant stars. Two beings, evolutionary strangers, finding unexpected harmony in their differences. Your emergency beacon activated during the Vraxian attack, Ilera noted as they stood on the outpost's observation deck, watching Proxima 7's strange, elongated sunrise. Your people will come looking for you. Marcus tensed slightly. He had been avoiding this reality. Probably. If they received the signal. Do you want to be found? Her question was direct, her gaze searching. Before he could answer, a proximity alert sounded. Both of them moved quickly to the command center, where the displays showed a vessel entering the atmosphere, human in design. That's an Alliance rescue shuttle, Marcus confirmed, his expression unreadable. Your people have come for you, Ilera said, her voice carefully neutral despite the turmoil evident in her eyes. You will return to your world. Marcus began, then faltered. Duty, loyalty, his entire life before this moment, all pulled at him. Yet so did the copper-skinned woman beside him, who commanded storms and had somehow claimed a place in his heart in mere days. The shuttle's communication system crackled to life. Captain Reeves, this is Extraction Team Bravo. Do you copy? We've locked onto your beacon. Marcus hesitated before responding. Copy, Bravo. Good to hear your voice. Preparing to land at your coordinates. Any hostile presence we should know about? His eyes met Ilera's. Negative. Just, a local who helped me survive. Understood. ETA 3 minutes. Sending landing coordinates now. As the transmission ended, Ilera stepped back, her posture shifting to the formal stance of the commander he'd first met. You should prepare your things. Ilera. This was always the outcome, Captain, she interrupted, using his title for the first time since they'd become intimate. You are a soldier. You have duties, as do I. It's not that simple, Marcus insisted, reaching for her hand. What happened between us was an anomaly. A response to extreme circumstances. Her voice was cool, but her eyes betrayed her, flashing with suppressed emotion. Your people would never accept what I am. And mine would see you as an invader. The shuttle was visible now through the view screen, descending toward the clearing beyond the outpost. Time was running out. Come with me, Marcus said suddenly. Meet my people. Let them see what I've seen, that cooperation between our species is possible. Ilera's expression darkened. Is that what I am to you? A diplomatic opportunity? That's not what I meant. Or perhaps a scientific curiosity. The alien who controls storms, valuable for study and potential military applications? Her voice rose, the air around them growing noticeably charged. Small objects on nearby surfaces began to vibrate. "That's not fair," Marcus snapped. "You know that's not how I see you." "Do I?" Lightning-like energy crackled between her fingers. "I have opened myself to you, shown you powers my people guard zealously. And now your military arrives, and you speak of cooperation and possibilities?" The shuttle had landed. Outside, uniformed personnel were disembarking, weapons at the ready despite Marcus's all clear. "They're just being cautious," he said, noting her alarm at their armed approach. "Standard procedure." "Like collecting samples is standard procedure?" she asked coldly. "Like documenting potentially useful alien abilities?" The accusation stung because it held a kernel of truth. Alliance protocol for first contact did indeed include comprehensive documentation of indigenous capabilities, especially those with potential strategic value. "I would never let them hurt you," Marcus insisted. "You have to trust me." "Trust?" she echoed, stepping further away as the elemental energy around her intensified. "While your soldiers approach my home with weapons drawn? While you speak of taking me to your world like some trophy?" "That's not," Marcus began, but was interrupted by a transmission. "Captain Reeves, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from your location. Are you under duress? Please respond." Marcus saw the situation deteriorating rapidly. Ilara's control was slipping, her emotional state affecting the elemental forces around them. The outpost's walls pulsed with sympathetic energy, and outside, the weather was shifting, clouds gathering with unnatural speed. "I need to respond or they'll think I'm in danger," he explained urgently. "They'll attack." "Perhaps they should fear me," Ilara whispered, her eyes beginning to glow. "Perhaps they should know what happens when they threaten a daughter of the elements." "Ilara, don't," Marcus pleaded, reaching for her despite the painful static shock her charged skin delivered. "These are my people. My friends." His radio crackled again. "Captain, we are initiating emergency extraction protocol. Please confirm your status immediately." The moment of decision had arrived. Outside, storm clouds gathered with impossible speed. Inside, the woman he had come to care for deeply stood on the precipice of unleashing forces his comrades couldn't possibly understand or withstand. "I have to go out there," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "I have to stop this before someone gets hurt." "Then go," Ilara replied, the glow in her eyes intensifying. "Return to your kind, Captain Reeves. But know this, what we shared was real. My pain now is proof of that." As he backed toward the exit, Marcus saw tears like liquid light tracking down her copper cheeks. The room's energy reached a crescendo around her, furniture and equipment rising from the floor as her emotional control fractured further. "I will come back," he promised, one hand on the door. "Whatever it takes." "No," she replied softly, the word nearly lost in the growing tempest. "If you leave now, do not return. Some bridges, once broken, cannot be rebuilt." As Marcus stepped outside to face his approaching comrades, the sky above darkened to near night, and the wind began to howl with a voice that sounded almost human in its grief. "Captain, with all due respect, you're not thinking clearly." Commander Jansen leaned across the shuttle's tactical table, her expression a mixture of concern and frustration. "This alien demonstrated hostile capabilities. The storm that nearly took down our shuttle wasn't natural. Because you approached with weapons drawn," Marcus countered, struggling to keep his voice level. They'd been having variations of this argument for the past hour as the shuttle maintained a holding pattern in Proxima 7's upper atmosphere. Ilara was defending herself. "Ilara," Jansen repeated, exchanging glances with the science officer. "You're on a first-name basis with an alien elemental who can manipulate weather patterns?" Marcus ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion and emotional turmoil taking their toll. "You don't understand what happened down there. The Vraxians, the storm. She saved my life multiple times. And we're grateful, Jansen said, her tone softening slightly. But our mission now is to return to the fleet with you and your reconnaissance data. The Alliance will send a proper diplomatic team if first contact is warranted. Marcus looked out the viewport at the swirling clouds below. Somewhere down there, Ilara was alone again in her outpost, hurt, angry, and feeling betrayed. The thought was unbearable. What if I told you she possesses knowledge that could revolutionize our understanding of planetary ecosystems? He asked carefully. Sustainable energy generation, atmospheric stabilization techniques? The science officer perked up immediately. You have documentation of these capabilities? Better, Marcus replied. I've experienced them firsthand. But proper diplomatic exchange requires trust. We destroyed that by approaching as a military force rather than peaceful envoys. Jansen studied him with narrowed eyes. There's something you're not telling us, Captain. Marcus met her gaze steadily. There's a lot I'm not telling you, Commander. Some of it is personal. Some of it would require security clearances none of us in this shuttle possess. A calculated exaggeration, but not entirely untrue. The potential applications of Proximan elemental manipulation were indeed of the highest strategic value. What are you proposing, exactly? Jansen asked after a long moment. Let me go back down. Alone. Marcus leaned forward intently. Give me 48 hours to re-establish contact and prepare her for formal diplomatic engagement. Out of the question, Jansen began, but the science officer raised a hand. Actually, Commander, there may be merit to this approach. Our sensors confirm the atmospheric disturbances have ceased. If the captain can ensure our next contact is peaceful. The debate continued for another half hour before Jansen finally relented, if only partially. 24 hours, she said firmly. You take a communicator. Check-ins every 4 hours. At the first sign of hostility, we extract you immediately. Non-negotiable. Agreed, Marcus said, relief washing over him. It wasn't ideal, but it was something. As the shuttle descended toward the outpost once more, Marcus prepared himself mentally. He had no idea what reception awaited him, whether Ilara would even speak to him, let alone listen to his proposal. The storm had dissipated completely, leaving an eerie calm around the outpost. As Marcus approached alone, unarmed, he noted subtle changes in the structure. It seemed dimmer somehow, its organic components less vibrant. Ilara, he called as he entered the main chamber. It's Marcus. I've come back. Silence greeted him. He moved deeper into the outpost, through corridors that no longer brightened at his approach. The command center was empty, showing signs of Ilara's emotional outburst, equipment scattered, consoles damaged. He found her finally in the observation dome, sitting cross-legged in a meditation pose, her back to him. Around her floated small spheres of elemental energy, fire, water, earth, and air, rotating slowly in perfect harmony. I told you not to return, she said without turning. I've never been good at following orders, Marcus replied softly. Even from powerful alien commanders. Your stubborn nature becomes tiresome, she said, but there was less bite in her words than before. Ilara, please look at me. Slowly, she turned. Her eyes were clear now, the storm of emotion apparently mastered, but her expression remained guarded. I came back because I couldn't leave things as they were, Marcus said, taking a cautious step forward. Not after everything we've shared. Your duty is to your people, she replied. As mine is to Proxima. What if those duties aren't mutually exclusive? He took another step closer. What if there's a path that serves both our worlds? Curiosity flickered across her features. Explain. An official diplomatic mission. Formal first contact between our species. cultural exchange, scientific cooperation. He paused, gathering courage. And I would stay here, as the human liaison. Her eyes widened slightly. You would remain on Proxima? If you'll have me, he said simply. Your military would allow this? They don't have much choice, Marcus said with a slight smile. I'm the only human who's established meaningful contact with your species. And I've neglected to mention certain details in my official report. Such as the fact that I'm in love with you. The elemental spheres around Ilera faltered momentarily, betraying her surprise before resuming their perfect orbit. Love, she repeated, testing the word. A human concept. Emotional attachment between mates. It's a bit more than that, Marcus said, taking the final steps to reach her. It's choosing someone. Choosing their world alongside your own. And you have chosen me? Her voice was barely above a whisper now. I came back, didn't I? He knelt before her, at eye level now. Against orders, against reason. Because the thought of never seeing you again was worse than any storm I could face. The elemental spheres around them expanded slowly, enveloping them both in a gentle cocoon of energy that tingled against Marcus's skin. My people have a ritual, Ilera said, reaching for his hands. When two souls choose to intertwine their paths. It involves sharing elemental essence, a permanent bond that transcends physical form. Sounds serious, Marcus said, his attempt at levity undermined by the emotion in his voice. It is irrevocable, she confirmed solemnly. And unprecedented between our species. The effects on a human are unknown. I'm willing to risk it, he said without hesitation. If it means being with you. Building something new between our worlds. Ilera's eyes searched his, looking for any trace of doubt and finding none. Slowly, a smile spread across her face, radiant and transformative. Then let us begin, she whispered, leaning forward until their foreheads touched. The elemental energy around them intensified, spiraling inward until it surrounded their joined hands. Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation spreading up his arms, not unpleasant but unlike anything he'd experienced before. Where their skin touched, a faint luminescence began to appear, copper and tan intermingled with threads of emerald light. I feel it, he gasped as the energy pulsed through him. What's happening? Your body is accepting elemental essence, Ilera explained, wonder in her voice. It should not be possible for a non-Proximan, yet you are adapting. The sensation peaked in a moment of exquisite connection, as if every cell in his body had temporarily merged with hers, sharing memories, sensations, and something deeper that transcended physical form. When it subsided, Marcus looked down at his arms to see faint, phosphorescent patterns just beneath his skin, similar to Ilera's but uniquely his own. Well, he said, examining the subtle glow with amazement, that's going to be interesting to explain in my next medical exam. Ilera laughed, a sound like wind chimes that made the patterns on her skin pulse brighter. You are truly unique, Marcus Reeves. The first human to bond with Proxima's elements. The first to truly understand our world. And the first to find home in the arms of an elemental commander, he added, pulling her close. Outside, as if responding to their bond, the skies of Proxima 7 cleared to reveal a perfect day. The storm had passed, and in its wake, something new had been created, a bridge between worlds that began with one stubborn human soldier and one powerful alien woman who commanded the elements. Their path forward would not be easy. There would be diplomatic challenges, cultural misunderstandings, and prejudices to overcome on both sides. But as they stood together on the observation deck, watching Proxima's strange sunset paint the sky in colors no Earth artist had ever captured, they faced the future with confidence. For if a storm could be calmed and a soldier's heart could learn to surrender, perhaps two worlds could also find harmony, one impossible love story at a time.